councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. The first reports say that President Kennedy has been seriously wounded by this shooting.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
Either you were with us or you were with the terrorists.
But I also believe that a lot of gun owners would agree that AK-47s belong in the hands of soldiers, not in the hands of criminals.
Guns will be taken, and no one will be able to be armed. We will take all guns.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city.
Global governance at last. Is it one world? The central bankers in charge. But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do?
As for me, give me liberty or give me death!
The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Tuesday, January the 15th, 2013, and here are our top stories.
Tonight, Joe Biden says the White House is eyeing 19 executive actions to enforce new unprecedented gun restrictions. Meanwhile, New York passes a gun bill in the middle of the night that turns law-abiding citizens into criminals. That's up next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
Well, our top story tonight, it looks like the White House is considering executive action. Politico reports that the focus on executive orders is a result of the White House and other Democrats acknowledging the political difficulty of enacting new gun legislation. Well, you know, the political difficulty is not really the issue. It's the legal difficulty. You know, we have a political process. We didn't elect a king, as Rand Paul pointed out. We have a Congress that passes laws, and those laws have to be in accordance to the Constitution that the Congress and the President swear allegiance to. You know, we really do have a king in America. It's the Constitution. At the time of the American Revolution, the cry was, "No king but Jesus." And but in a sense, the Constitution is our king, and these people are kind of like the stewards. If you want to go back to the Lord of the Rings reference, they're kind of like Denethor, the steward, who is unfaithful and trying to usurp power from the king. Well, if they try to do this and move, as Politico says, unilaterally, if they try to move unilaterally, if they try to dictate this like a dictator, they're going to find a return of the king, and they're going to find the Constitution coming back with a vengeance. As a matter of fact, a Texas congressman has threatened Obama with impeachment if he uses executive orders on guns. This is a quote from the article, "Obama's gun grab is an unconstitutional threat to the nation," says Republican Representative Steve Stockman of Texas. He said, "The White House's recent announcement that they will use executive orders and executive actions to infringe on our constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms is unconstitutional and an unconscionable act on the very founding principles of this republic." And he goes on to say, "If the president is allowed to suspend constitutional rights on his own personal whims, our free republic has effectively ceased to exist." Well, a lot of us have been saying that when things like the NDAA and were passed, and the TSA, the actions that they do, FISA, the Patriot Act itself. But, you know, these are, I guess you could call them a long train of abuses. That's what the founders called it when they suffered those types of things at the hands of the British. But the thing that triggered it was when they came for the guns. And so we hope that Obama and the other Democrats that are pushing for this aren't such poor students of history. But it doesn't look like they are. In New York, the Senate has passed a draconian gun bill overnight These are the kind of tactics that we see them doing, passing these things in the dead of night. And here's what the bill contains. It's going to limit magazines to just 7 bullets. It's going to make unsafe storage of so-called assault weapons, which, of course, they've yet to define. It's going to make that a misdemeanor. It's going to outlaw internet sales of assault weapons to New York. It will require retailers that sell ammunition to register with the state, to run background checks on purchasers, and maintain a database of all ammunition sales. And it will mandate mental health therapists to report their patients if they make a credible threat to use a gun illegally. The police will then, of course, confiscate the firearm. So basically what they're going to do is turn mental health personnel, psychologists, into government snitches. And they're going to probably take that to a degree that they're going to protect themselves. If there's any doubt whatsoever, they're going to turn people in. They're not going to give people the benefit of the doubt because that exposes them to legal risk. And one of the other things it's going to do is it's going to force people to register so-called assault weapons with the police. Now, of course, this is something that assault weapons, if you ask them to define it, you'll get a million different definitions, but I'm sure they'll come up with some kind of a legal definition. One New York State senator was hopping mad when this came out. And he said the gun bill that was passed in the middle of the night, quote, turns law-abiding citizens into criminals. Members were forced to vote on a bill that they had not read, he said. He said, I simply cannot support a bill that turns law-abiding citizens into criminals by creating an entirely new category of illegal firearms out of currently legal rifles and shotguns. That was Senator Greg Ball, and we've got a clip of him. Let's go to that right now.
Not long ago, I think a woman was in Georgia. Somebody broke into her home, came after her. She shot him, I believe, 6 times. Tonight, we're going to pass legislation that if she had 8 rounds in that chamber instead of 7, she'd be a criminal.
That's exactly right. And he went on to say, we haven't saved any lives tonight except the political life of a governor who wants to be president. Well, we have another politician, Rahm Emanuel, who is calling for citizens to be left out of the discussion. Basically, everybody except law enforcement, he says, need to be left out of this discussion. And he wants to use semantic terms to change the terms of the debate so that it's now not about fundamental constitutional rights, but simply a law enforcement issue. So only law enforcement personnel should have something to say about it.